Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our meeting this evening, talking about the roles of the board. With this particular format, I will be going through a bunch of information this evening. If you have questions at all, you'll be able to type in your questions through the webinar chat, and I'll take a look at them, and I'll be happy to answer questions as we go along this evening for the presentation. And then there'll be plenty of time at the end too for us to be able to answer any questions that you might have. And so I will begin with our slideshow this evening, and that is on the roles of the board. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Gene Sullivan. I'm president and one of the owners of New Concepts Management. I've been in the homeowner association industry for about 40 years now. And tonight I've got several goals for us to take a look at. Number one is I want to be able to provide information so that everybody knows specifically what is the role of the board of directors. There is a specific job for everyone, and when you have a board that runs very well because everyone knows what their job, their duties are. You have an association that can move through a lot of issues, a lot of matters, and even very difficult ones, because everybody will be working together. Secondly, we're going to give you what we are considering some of the best examples, best practices for you as a director to consider in how you run your homeowner association meetings. And then we're going to also give you at the end some resources that if you wish further information, some of you are probably very analytical and want to know where can I read more, where can I find out more. We're going to give you that as well. And so any of the questions that I don't answer as we go along here, that's because I'll probably be answering that a little bit later on in this presentation. But at the end, I will make sure that we take the time to answer any questions that anybody has. So let's begin. Expectations for tonight. It's hope that you will be able to gain some insightful knowledge today about the presentation. Again, we welcome the questions. There's never a bad question. The bad question is the one that's not asked. And then I'd like to let you know that what we're going to be talking about is going to be based on generalities and standards. You're encouraged to always review your association's documents on any particular circumstances. Let's begin with, when we're talking about the board of directors, what is an officer of the board? Because we have this, you go to a homeowner association annual meeting, and for the first time, you are meeting with a lot of other neighbors that are in your same community, and you are charged with the responsibility of voting among yourselves who's going to be the ones that are going to be on the board, who are the ones that we're going to say you are our elected officials who are going to be able to help guide us in the business of the association. It's important to know that an officer of the board, whether it's president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, those are specific positions on the board. But when you as a homeowner association are electing the people who will serve on the board, you are electing the people who will be on the board. It is the responsibility of the board of directors to decide among themselves who will be president, vice president, and so forth. And so an officer is going to have certain duties to the association. And I think it is good to remember at this point that a homeowner in an association, you're voting for people that are going to be on the board. You're not going to vote for who's going to be the president, who's going to be the secretary. You're voting for who will be on the board, and that's a very important distinction to make, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. But then once that board is put together, they're going to elect among themselves who is going to fill in any particular office. And an officer has certain duties. And I think it's important to realize at the very beginning that when you hold an office as a board of director, that doesn't mean that you have greater authority than anybody else. I have dealt in the past with an association, and someone said, well, that's the board president. They're the ones that are going to make all the decisions. No, the decisions are made by the group that's called the board of directors. And this is not, your homeowner association is not like a privately held corporation. In a privately held corporation, the person who owns the company may be the president, and yes, they'll be making decisions and not necessarily give other people the responsibility or authority to be making decisions. But in a homeowners association, we need to remember that if you are a president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, you're holding an office. That does not give you any greater power than anybody else on the board. Or I'm sorry, it does give you power that others may not have, but it does not mean that you have greater authority over other directors. And that's an important distinction to know. People that are on the board who are officers of the board, because of their office, they have the ability to enter and obligate the association with contracts that must be upheld to if they sign them. And so you can't just willy-nilly just go ahead and sign contracts without taking a look at what the wishes are of everybody else on the board. You need to make sure that you are working within the what are the wishes of the majority of the people that are on the board and what you decide together. In State Statute 515B, Board of Directors, officers, the board shall elect the officers. They're the people that are going to hold the office. The typical officers that we're going to be taking a look at, of course, are the president, the vice president, the secretary, and the treasurer. With the president, this is the person who is, your role more than anything else is going to be the chairperson of the board. In a lot of cases, not necessarily, but in most, it's not uncommon for the board president to be the parliamentarian. They're the ones that are going to run the meeting. They're going to be going through the agenda, asking and calling for votes. But if you are ever uneasy of that position and you are the president, our property manager that's assigned to you will be very glad to help you in that role, in what you need to do. You take a look at the president as the CEO of the association. That means that they're going to see that all orders and resolutions are carried out. So one of the first duties of a board president is, after the board has made a decision, we're going to go with this painting contractor. They make sure and are the ones that follow through with the property manager. Has the contract been signed? Do we have a date that we're ready to get started? A lot of times we have the president as the one who's going to sign any of the contracts or any of the official documents that are going to obligate the association. Okay, it's as I mentioned earlier, it is good to note that any board official has the authorization to sign on behalf and obligate the association to a contract, but that's something that's generally given to the board. The board president is going to be typically the first person who is the main contact with management. So that's not to say that other board members can't have communication with the management company or with the manager. However, I think, as we all know, when you're getting directions from a number of people all at once, it can be quite confusing to knowing what is the direction that I need to move forward with. What is the direction that I need to be obedient to? And so it is best that that comes from the president, who will say, on behalf of the board, here's what we want you to do. The role of the vice president, on the other hand, they have a job to be in waiting. One of their responsibilities is that if the president is not able to perform their duties, if they're going to be absent or unable to act, they need to be able to step in and to be able to act on behalf of the president. The vice president is often given the duties to perform, such as a committee liaison or a meeting timekeeper. That's a real important job. As we all know, if you've been on any association board meetings or have attended them in the past, you know that a lot of times they can get off track. It is the duty of the vice president to kind of be the timekeeper, to try kind of help keep everything moving forward. Because even though the president is trying to do that, they're going to be more involved with the details of the agenda at that moment. One of the things that you may want to take a look at, it's not a bad idea. It's not anything that I'll say is mandatory, but a number of organizations I know will say that the person who is the vice president is the person we're grooming to be president. This is very important because you know that in being on the board of directors with your association, every director is elected at different time levels, and it's usually for a 2 or 3 year term. And when they overlap one another, what that does is it allows for there to be a little bit more continuity. And so it is going to be something to think about that. And as an association, you may want to say that one of the duties that we're going to put on the vice president is that if you're in this role, it's because we will want you to eventually be the president of the association. Let's take a look at the role of the secretary. The secretary is the person who's responsible for keeping the minutes of all the meetings of the board of directors and of the association. That would be the annual meeting and special meetings, as well as any board meetings. The secretary is the one who gives notice of a meeting. And so that doesn't mean that the secretary has to actually write any notice of any meetings going out, but it is coming from their authority in their position on the board. And the most important job of the secretary is that they're going to keep appropriate current records showing that what has taken place with the votes of the board and with what the board desires to do in moving forward with the operations of the property. Okay. The main job of the secretary, more than anything else, is they're helping to help keep the management company very organized and being able to move straight forward. If you've gone to any meeting with a board of directors, it's easy to see where conversations get off on a tangent. A number of people are talking at once, but the secretary is the one who needs to say, okay, I need to call from this. What are the responsibilities? What are the directions that we are giving the management company to do? And actually, the marching orders for any management company is going to come from a good secretary who's going to be able to delineate and be able to say line by line, this is what you need to do between now and the next time that we meet. The role of the treasurer. They're the person who has responsibility for the association funds. That does not necessarily mean that the treasurer is the one who's going to say how the money is spent. This means that they're the ones that are going to be able to say, the management company has said, this is how much money we have. The management company has said, these monies have been spent and have been paid for these contractors, for these contracts that we've wanted to have have accomplished, but they're the ones to be a check and balance to make sure that that has taken place. They're going to keep accurate accounting of the financial transactions and receipts. They're going to provide feedback to the board on possible investment options. The treasurer is probably the one more than anybody else who is going to have the conversations with management to say, what else could we be putting our money into for the best return for our savings with our reserves? And the treasurer certainly is not the one who is going to sign all checks, but they're the ones that are going to, their job is to make sure that the checks that went out were checks that were all approved by the board. And they're going to be able to make sure that the deposits that were made align with what the bank statements show. And they're going to be the ones also, just like the secretary is responsible for saying, here are the duties of the things you need to complete between now and next month. The treasurer also will have duties that they will be delegating to the management company. So what are we supposed to do with this? Many board members ask, what are we supposed to do as the president, as the treasurer? You need to remember that your job is to review your documents with your manager. The assigned property manager to your association is not an enemy. They're a person that are working with you and for the best of what you want to accomplish, okay? And so you need to be very frank with them and very direct in reviewing the documents. You need to determine clear division of responsibility. And it's good to do that up front. It is good to just say to your property manager and for the management company, we're going to give you the ability to, for example, pay the normal invoices that come in for insurance because insurance needs to be paid. And we have water irrigation, so water's got to be paid. These are things that aren't under dispute. So you give them the authority to just do that, and that allows you to be able to handle the specific projects, the $50,000 painting job that you're going to be done before the money goes out. That's where you would tell the management company, you know what, we're going to have a division here. You can pay these bills, the ones that we need to pay each and every month, but for the special projects, before any money goes out, that's got to be approved by the board before anything happens. You need to know and understand your power. What we're going to be talking about tonight is for everybody to know how to stay in their lane, to be able to take responsibility for their role. It's important that in a board meeting that there is focus on the goals for the association. And you are going to be focusing as a board on exchanging information. You are going to be wanting to make decisions for projects, whether it's in asphalt or roof repair or in landscape improvement or what have you. You are going to need to focus that you have the information that you need to make the decision. You need to realize that your focus is to solve problems. Your focus is to make decisions. And the way you do that is by all must actively participate. I've seen over the years, unfortunately, there have been situations where there are one board member who is probably a little bit more outgoing, little bit more outspoken, and they're very quick to share what they think. And other people are reticent, and they're reticent to being on the board, so they just allow that person to declare what's going to take place. And what happens over time is a different kind of synergy takes place. A DNA takes place in that association where one person makes decisions, and that's not what you should be allowing. You need to remember that everybody that's on the board must actively participate. You are chosen because there needs to be other perspectives. Because when you have more perspectives on a situation, I guarantee you're going to have a better result. You're going to understand and communicate issues to the membership also in a much more effective way. Let's talk about some of the goals of everybody in their roles on the board. The president has certain goals for the meetings. Number one, it says, except as otherwise provided in this subsection of the state statute on homeowner associations, it says meetings of the board of directors must be open to unit owners. Now, I know there are some boards out there that are saying, why do we have to have homeowners involved in meetings? They're the ones that just come in angry. They're the ones that get us off track. But if you're a board president, one of your goals is to make sure that your duty is to make sure that there's transparency in your association, that you are making sure that homeowners are aware of meetings of the board of directors. If things are going well, I'll tell you probably 80–90% of the time, a lot of people just won't show up because they say, you're doing a good job. You guys are doing everything we want. And so even with that in mind, you need to remember that your duty, though, is to give people the option to make sure that they know that they have the ability to attend, to listen, to know what's going on with the decisions for that community. Okay? You need to know the exclusion, the things that you are not allowed to do. There are times when the board of directors will have the authority to be able to make a decision and move forward. An example of that would be your rules and regulations. And you want to tweak that because you want to make it a little bit more efficient with one rule. The board has the authority to do that. But if you're going to be changing something that is in the other aspects of the governing documents, in the Declaration of Covenants or in the bylaws, you need not just the board to make those decisions. You need to now bring in the homeowners and you need to know the difference of when they need to be brought in. The president, a lot of times, is given the responsibility of controlling the meeting and communicating. And to do that very effectively and efficiently, we recommend that you take a look at Robert's Rules of Order. Now, some of you are probably saying, Robert's Rules of Order. That sounds like something that's really formal and something that's really legal, and I just don't know or understand what's going on. But you need to understand this is really a wonderful tool to use for all of your meetings. Let me give you an example and a little bit of a background. Robert's Rules of Order Roberts was a colonel in the United States uh, Union in the Army during the Civil War. And he fought for the North. And when he was done with his duty with the Civil War, he went back home. And the church where Roberts was a member of, the pastor came to him and said, "We have a real contentious meeting, and people kind of know and understand that you are kind of a hero. A lot of people have a lot of respect for you in our town. I'm wondering if maybe you could come and help run this meeting." And so he said, "I would be glad to do that." He attended the meeting, and the meeting was nothing but absolute chaos. And he went away from there, and he would stated to other people, "I think there was worse fighting at that meeting than I saw in all of the Civil War." And so he came up with a uh, checklist, with a process in how things are done. So we can help you with using Robert's Rules of Order, but let me give you an example of where that can be very effective. There was a number of years ago, there was an association that said, "Gene, every time we have the annual meeting, one homeowner shows up each and every year, and he's never gotten over a decision that we as an association made in our governing documents. And he comes in every year and he wants to argue that point, and he's been doing it year after year after year." And so I said, "Well, let's take a look at using Robert's Rules of Order." And Robert's Rules of Order really isn't that difficult. It is something that's going to be used to allow you to be able to keep everything to be running smoothly. It is a process that allows everybody to have the opportunity to be heard, and allows for decisions to be made in a very orderly manner, making sure that the wishes of the majority are what move forward. And so in Robert's Rules of Order, there was this homeowner who showed up, and they wanted to take, as they had done the last 5 years, stand up and start haranguing how they disagreed with a decision that the association had made 5 years before, and they didn't know what to do. Well, with Robert's Rules of Order, when someone says, "I'd like to talk about this issue," the first thing that the parliamentarian, in this case the president, would say would be, "Okay, this homeowner would like to talk about this issue. And so we need to have a second." And I want people to know that if nobody seconds this motion, that means that there's nobody else present that wants to continue moving on and taking up time in our meeting to talk about this issue. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask, so-and-so would like to talk about this issue. Do we have a second? And for the first time in 5 years, things were quiet. And there wasn't one person at that meeting who made a second motion so that that could be something that could be discussed. So the parliamentarian, who was the president, said, "Well, so-and-so, thank you for bringing it up, but it appears that there's nobody else at our meeting tonight that wishes to discuss that issue. We will move on." And that is how you continue to move forward and continue to move forward. And I'll talk a little bit more about how you can use Robert's Rules of Order, but it can be a very effective way to be able to make sure that your meetings keep moving forward. But the president, we're talking about goals now. The two things that you can probably encourage everybody on the board to do more than anything else are these next two things. The first is encourage all directors to prepare before each meeting. I know there are times when people will say, well, we don't get the board packet until the day before. When sometimes people will say we don't get the board packet till the day of the meeting. But honestly, in the cases where the board packet has been given 3 to 5 business days ahead of time, there are a lot of board of directors who don't open that board packet until they're at that meeting. And if you are that way, you're going to do a disservice, because how can you intelligently talk about the decisions you need to make if you haven't looked at the information ahead of time? And so, yes, we as a management company have the responsibility to make sure you have that packet 3 to 5 business days ahead of the meeting. You have number one goal. You have to make sure that you are prepared for each meeting. Because if you have a question, if you don't understand what's going on, and it's 3 or 4 days before the meeting, you can give a quick call to the property manager. You can give them an email, and they can send you an answer. And you'll have, so you'll know what it is that you're reading, so that you can talk intelligently about what needs to be done. The second thing that a board president can do in encouraging great meetings to take place, number one, we said, prepare for the meeting by reading the board packet. Number two, for the board president, is to follow the agenda. You work with the management company to help establish the agenda. And so the agenda for any board meeting in any 1 month will usually be, because the board president will say, well, we've talked about the landscaping that needs to be done. We need to get the 3 bids for the asphalt work that we want to do in early fall. And you organize all of that on the important things that need to be done. And then if you're going to make decisions, you need to follow that agenda. What happens with a lot of board meetings is people get off track because they don't follow the agenda. So if you're the president, you're the parliamentarian, when people start talking about something that's different than the agenda line item that you are focused on right now, you need to be the first person to say, hey, everybody, we'll talk about that later, but right now we're talking about this, and you keep everybody focused. And then with the board discussion, you need to limit discussion in a reasonable manner. Let me tell you how a lot of board meetings go. There will be someone who will say, we heard about the home at 1401, and they don't ever pick up after their dog, and there's dog poop everywhere in the yard, and the lawn care company is disgusted, and they are thinking of not cutting the grass if that doesn't get picked up. And so you talk about what needs to be done. And one board member is going to say, well, let me tell you about a story. And then they start telling you their story about another person who didn't pick up after their dog poop. It's you, the president, that needs to say, we need to talk about, excuse me, we're not here just to talk about stories. We need to talk about what we need to do moving forward. And so they'll ask that, let me ask you, what do you think that needs to be done? And then after that person speaks, someone else comes in and they start talking and they start telling their story. And then you need to be the one to say, oh, we need to stop. Do you have anything to say that's different than what Bob had just said a couple of minutes ago? And if they do, then they're going to share a few things. And then you go around the board and you ask the third person and the board president. Your goal is to make sure that you hear from everybody on your board on what needs to be done. And if what they're saying is exactly the same as the person who just spoke, you can say, let's move on. Is there anything else? Does anybody have anything different, anything additional to add? And if you don't, if everybody is thinking the same thing, that's where you, the board president, needs to say, guess what? We're ready for a vote. And you take a vote, you make a decision, and you move on. And if you do that in your board, you're going to find that you're going to be able to cut down the amount of time that you spend each and every month in a huge way. And then after you've made the decision, one of the things that's going to be most important for you at the end of the meeting, and this is something that we insist at New Concepts with all of our managers, and I hope our managers have this, but the second to the last item on the agenda should be a line item that says managers punch list or managers action items. And this is for the manager to say, I want to take a few minutes before we adjourn to repeat back to you everything you've asked me to do between now and the next time that we meet. What this is going to do, it's going to make sure that you, the board, you need to listen. Did the manager understand our directions? If they didn't, it'll give you a chance to clarify them. The other thing that you can count on with our managers should be also very open with you and direct to be able to say, managers or board of directors, let me just say, you've asked me to do 12 action items between now and the next time we meet 30 days from now. And I can tell you that realistically, there isn't enough time in the day to do all 12 of these items. I can do 7 of these items. Here are the 7 that I think are the most important to handle. And then you allow the manager to repeat that back to you. And that gives you the chance to say, yep, those are the 7 highest priority items for us too. Or it gives you a chance to say, no, instead of doing this, we want you to do this that we had on our list. And before you go, you're able to work out together, reviewing the punch list items so that you know this is what the manager can handle. This is what the manager is going to actively be able to do. And then the manager is going to be able to say these other 5 items that we couldn't hold on to, they become what's called old business and will be on the agenda next month because we're not going to forget about them. And then there are other items that you're going to be talking about, and it allows you to prioritize and direct the work that takes place at the association. And so these are all of the things that you're going to do in the open meeting of the board. But as you know, there are times when you as a board of directors know that there are some things that are very confidential information that you need to talk about. And so it is okay for a board of directors, after they've had their monthly board meeting, to be able to say, now we need to go into what's called executive session. And the purpose of the executive session is so that you can have the opportunity to say, here's what we're dealing with collection. So-and-so is this far behind. What do we need to do next? Have we placed the lien? Do we need to move forward with foreclosure? But because that's confidential information, it shouldn't be in an open meeting. So you don't want that discussed with other homeowners around. Another example of something you wouldn't discuss in an open meeting, let's say you're talking about possibly suing a contractor for work that they have or haven't done. You don't want other people to know about that, for that to be out there to be picked up, because what you're doing and how you're going to proceed may be very important that certain things be done in a certain order and in a certain way. And so you want to make sure that there is confidentiality there as well. So with personal matters, potential litigation, arbitration, items like we've talked about, collections, those are things that you would not bring up in the open meeting. You wouldn't open up anything that deals with criminal activity. And so these are things that you're going to be making decisions. However, now we are in a situation where you're in an open meeting, you're making decisions. Homeowners have the freedom to come and listen to your meeting and to hear how you're deciding on matters for the operation of the property. But what do you do when it comes to going into executive session with things that are confidential? The details are not going to be heard by the homeowners, but once you as a board make a decision, then what you need to do is to make sure that you, at the very beginning of the next board meeting, say, last month we went into executive decision, and you don't have to say who the person was, but if it's a matter of collection, what you would say is, we've decided to move forward with one property that owes $4,000. We are moving forward with foreclosure. And so homeowners do need to eventually know, and it needs to be disclosed to them what you've decided. But when you're talking about the intricacies and the details, that's something that does not need to be privy to everybody in the association. So those are the goals of the president. The vice president now has goals at this meeting. Number one is they need to look for ways to improve the meeting experience, to make suggestions. The vice president is one who's ready to take and step in for the president. And so they need to be probably one of the biggest cheerleaders for the president and the president's agenda, and the agenda that the president has and wants to move forward to with what is first priority, what is second priority. And so you look at ways to improve the meeting experience and to make sure things move forward. You keep on top of matters because you never know when you're going to need to step up. The vice president isn't a role that where some people say, well, there's nothing really to do, so there's nothing I have to pay attention to. No, you have to pay attention maybe as much or more than anybody else in the room, because in case that the president is unable to continue to move forward, you need to be able to make sure that your property is going to be able to continue to move forward in decisions and direction. For the secretary, you're going to have a goal, some goals. Number one is to make sure that there's clear, concise minutes of the meetings. And what that means more than anything else is you're capturing the motions and the decision. Meeting minutes, people get afraid of saying, I don't want to be secretary because I'm not a stenographer. I'm not a person who is going to capture all of the conversation. That's not what you are responsible for doing, is a verbatim recitation of each conversation. But when the board makes a decision and they said, We've decided after looking at 3 bids for asphalt, we're going to go with company XYZ. You make sure that that is what is in there. And you would write in and management company is going to make sure that this project gets started in June or it gets started in July. And so you just capture the motions and the decision. That's what you need to do. And then you provide copies to the other directors and the management company as soon as you can after the meeting. Because even though the management company and the manager said, here are the action items, and you've gone through that, you're now putting that down in a public record to say, this is what you said you were going to do. When a secretary acts that way and makes sure that, and they are capturing the decisions of the board, that's going to help keep the property manager on track to make sure that things get done and in an orderly fashion. The treasurer, you have goals too. Number one is you need to review the financial statements each and every month. Okay. And if your board meets less because you meet every other month or quarterly, even more so, you need to make sure that your duty is to know, even though we're not meeting, I'm going to review all of the expenses that the management company okayed. Were they the expenses that we okayed? If there wasn't one, if there was something that they paid for that you had not given direction to, then you need to say, hey, time out. We need to talk here. And so as a treasurer, your goal is to really check all of the things that were done each and every month. And I know and understand there are people that may not feel familiar or comfortable with reading financial statements. If that's the case, we have another webinar that we will have sometime soon in the next few months that are that's going to go through how to read a financial statement. Because some of you that are on the board are going to be, you are here now on a board of a corporation. That's what an association is. And you are on the board of a corporation that is a multi-million-dollar corporation that spends hundreds, thousands of dollars a year. So it's very important that you make sure that things are done correctly. So we want to make sure that you know how to read a financial statement. If you feel uneasy, that's a webinar that you may want to take a look at coming up. But the treasurer is responsible to make sure that things are spent correctly. They're going to also establish a line of communication with the management company and their financial representative. They're going to make sure that there is a clear report, an accounting of everything that has taken place. And more than anything else, as a treasurer, if you go through the financials, just take a look and say what's unusual from what wasn't the case the month before. If you just even had that in your mindset, you would probably catch a lot of what goes on to make sure that things are going to be taken care of the way they should. And you're going to now, in your goal as a treasurer is to regularly review the cash that you have on hand, the cash that's being set aside for reserves for future projects that need to be taken care of. In essence, what we're talking about here is the responsibility of everybody on the board. There are other resources that you can take a look at. Google HOA Board Code of Conduct. You know, Community Associations Institute has a wonderful, just one-page white paper on the roles of the board, the duties of everybody on the board. And that would be an excellent guide for you to take a look at. You need to understand that Minnesota law governs our homeowner association. And so you need to have an understanding in the state statutes. In state statute 515, in 515A, 515B are the ones that would deal with your homeowner association. The other thing you need to remember as a resource, if you're on the board, can look at your association documents. That's the rule book. Did you know that in the governing documents for an association, a lot of people just call them the bylaws, but that's just one subset of the governing documents. You have in the governing documents, you have what's called the Articles of Incorporation, where it announces that as of this date, there's a new corporation that has been formed, and it's the name of your homeowner association. And then next, you have what's called the Declaration and Covenant. And what declaration and covenants are, just a fancy word of saying, here are the things that we are stating that we agree to, and covenants just means the promises that we have to one another. And a covenant in a homeowner association just means if I buy a home in this association, I'm going to promise to you what you're going to promise to me. And so in the declaration and covenants, that's where you're going to find things that are going to define the board of directors, the members. You're going to define what are the responsibilities of the association, what are the responsibilities of just the individual homeowner. And then you have the bylaws. And what are the bylaws? They're laws that just say, here's how we're going to relate to one another. So that if we have a meeting, how our decision is going to be made, it's not going to be a free-for-all. We're going to, among ourselves, choose among us 5 people that are going to be on the board, and they're going to make the decision. If we don't like the decisions they're making, when it comes time for re-election, we don't re-elect that person, we elect someone else. It's what we do for city council, it's what we do for state government, it's what we do on the federal side for government. It's called a representative government, okay? And so, but your documents are going to be able to help you with that. The other resource to take a look at is your property manager. As the management company and as a property manager, we're not going to know all the answers. But I can tell you that if you're dealing with something once, that property manager has probably dealt with it 3 or 4 other times already this year with 3 or 4 other properties that they're managing. And as a property manager, we need to know the limits of our authority. And we need to be, as the saying goes, we need to be the jack of all trades and the king of none. So we know a little bit about everything, but we're not necessarily the definitive word on everything, but we should be able to point you in the direction, point you into another group of people that will help you in making the decisions that you need to, whether that's with a CPA, maybe that's with an attorney, perhaps that's with an engineer. That is the information that we have today that we have wanted to share. And I wanted to ask if there are questions that anybody has for me. You can, that's something that you can type in the chat box. And I don't know that I see any specific questions that are being asked. And if that's, oh wait, maybe we do. I do have a couple of questions right here. Here we go. One is, will your slide be available to HOAs attending this presentation? Will your slide deck be available? We will have things available afterwards for you to take a look at again. We have something, do you have any updates on the changes in association laws in Minnesota? Yes, we do. One person is saying, are you going to discuss House File 1268, Senate File 1750? And yes, let me do that perhaps in a broad way here this evening. As you know, we sent I sent a letter out about a week or so ago. The Minnesota legislature is making some very important decisions right now on how a homeowner association is able to function. And some of the things that they want to do is make what, in my mind, in the mind of so many others in our industry, would be a fundamental change in how homeowner associations even to take place. And some of our concerns have been because we have legislators, and God bless them, they are going to listen to their constituents, and they're going to try and put together answers to concerns that their constituents have, but they're not necessarily getting a full representation of everything that's happening in the industry, so things are being misrepresented. It has been misrepresented because of House File 1268, Senate File 1750, for example, that board of directors meetings are meetings that are basically run by people who are power hungry. These are, we're talking about people who just want to rule over other individuals, and we have no say on what happens. And so they have made some changes that if this current bill takes place and moves forward, let me just tell you just some of the things that would happen. For example, how many of you have an annual meeting and you know at the bottom of your heart that when it comes to that time for the annual meeting, you don't know if there will be even enough people to show up to make quorum? And the quorum isn't even necessarily half of the homeowner association. It can be 10%, 20, 30% of the homeowners need to be present. Well, this new law, House File 1268, Senate File 1750, says that if this law passes, that you would not be able to have an annual meeting unless you basically had 80% of the ownership there at the meeting, because to have more than 20% of your votes by proxy, because people who said, I don't need to show up, I don't need to attend, you're doing a good job, here's my proxy, go ahead and meet without me. The new law in Minnesota would say you can't do that. You can't use 20% or more than 20% of people voting by proxy to be able to have a meeting. For a number of you, that would mean you would have very difficulty in being able to get together to have an annual meeting to say who's going to be the new board of directors. And then it went one step further because there is this colorization that board members are bullies, meanies. We can't, they have too much power. The new law, if passed, would say that not a proxy could be given to a board member. So you can't use more than 20% of people's vote by proxies to be able to meet, but those proxies have to be in the hands of everybody else other than a board of directors, because a board of director would not be allowed to handle one proxy. Why is it going to be the case that a board member who is a homeowner, just like anybody else in the association, doesn't have the ability to be able to use proxies for votes? That is an example of one of the many reasons why this is such a bad bill. Let me give you another reason, and it's in the area of conflicts of interest. Homeowner associations or corporations, because of that, you are also charged with having to respond to the laws to state statute 317A, which deals with corporations and how you meet. And one deals with conflicts of interest. Conflicts of interest are something we all deal with all throughout our life. What is the conflict of interest? The conflict of interest is I have an allegiance to a group, to some people, that I'm going to always act in their best interest. And then you also have another group that you are especially fond of and have a close tie to. And you want to act in their best interest. There are times when something you're going to want to decide is going to be a conflict between those two groups. So let me give you an example. I have a conflict. I have as an individual, I have a duty to my family. As an owner of a business, I have a duty to my business and to the employees that work for me. I am a person who's also religious, and I go to church, and I have a duty to the people in the church where I go to church. And when I have a conflict of interest in what my duty is, Chapter 317 says, what do you need to do? How do you deal with a conflict of interest? Number one, it says you disclose. So you say to the other party, hey, look, I know I said I have a great responsibility to you, my employer, because you give me work. However, I have a duty to my family. In this particular case, someone has passed away and I need to attend there. And I know you're asking me to attend this meeting or this conference. But what you do is you disclose. And because you disclose, you're letting the other person know, hey, in this particular case, I'm not thinking in your best interest. What does that do? Well, if in a conflict of interest, let's put it in reality with an association, a homeowner association, and this is so true with 40% of all of the associations in Minnesota. 40% of all associations in Minnesota are self-managed because they're too small to have a management company, or they're in outstate Minnesota, they're not in the metro area, and they're in an area where there's not a homeowner association. And you may be limited in, for example, the number of contractors who are going to plow snow. And someone on the board is going to say, you know what? My nephew has a company. Well, now that's a conflict of interest. According to this new law, if it passes, you as a board would not be allowed to bring that up. You would have to not be able to consider it. You'd have to move on. But if you're dealing with a small city, a small association where you don't have a lot of options for managing, for contractors who will do work, you know that you need to take a look at an option that's being offered by someone on the board. Well, the fact that they disclosed it, what would they do? They would recuse themselves. So I'm on the board of a small association. I say, I think my nephew would do a good job plowing. And then that person would say, I'm going to recuse myself. They're not a part of the discussion. They're not a part of the vote. And a lot of times associations will vote and say, we're going to vote for that person's nephew to be the one that handles our snow plowing. And that's how you handle a conflict of interest. But now with this new law, you would be forbidden from doing any of that at all. So there are a number of things that House File 1268, Senate File 1750 would do that would be just very detrimental to associations. And we need to be able to talk about that. Let's see, other questions that we have. Does New Concepts have a punch list or checklist of items that a board should generally be sure to take care of during the year? Great question. Yes, we do. You should be able to talk to the property manager. And one of the things that we will do is we will have a calendar where there should have a listing of all of the obligations and the duties of the association. So they would say insurance is renewed in August. The annual meeting is in November. It's going to be that there is a spring walkthrough in April. It's going to be that you deal with all of the things that are specific to your association. That kind of a punch list can be put together and generally is. And if you haven't seen that for your association, you can probably talk to your property manager and they can provide you with a copy. If you don't, or even if you do, it's something you should be taking a look at as a board and making sure that you're updating every year. Another question here. Are HOA construction blueprints available anywhere? That's a very difficult one. With there are a number of homeowner associations that over the years have been developed by a builder, a developer, and from the very beginning, they had us as the beginning property management company. And so for those associations, yes, we do have those. But there are a number of you that have come over and were in place years before we ever had our relationship with you. If those didn't follow over from past, it may be the case that some of those are lost. But if you want to contact me specifically with your association and what your concern is, maybe we can put our heads together. So I would say email me after this meeting and let's see what we can do. Another question we have from someone is, do email communications between board members between meetings need to be part of documented meeting minutes. The purpose that we mentioned with the secretary is to make the decisions of the board. One of the things that we want to prevent from happening is there is in our society the threat of the immediate. There's everything seems to be an emergency nowadays. At New Concepts, we say true emergency is one where not to act now is going to do further damage to the property or is going to do possible harm to human lives. That is an emergency. Everything else is not. And so even though as a board member, if you get a hang fire and all of a sudden you're starting to think, oh, here's something we need to decide and we got to do it now. Don't get into the habit of trying to make those decisions in between board meetings. Number one, what that's going to do, it's going to put your property manager's hair on fire because you already gave them a list and a priority of things to do between now and the next time you meet. And now you're throwing some other things in the mix. If it's a true emergency, and from time to time that's going to happen, I understand, and you need to move forward and try to get people to act. But you need to know that Minnesota state statute says that if, as a board, you're going to act outside of a board meeting, you need to make sure that you've heard from everybody on the board. Just because you think something's important and it's in between board meetings, and you say, I've heard from 3 out of the 5, that would be a majority anyway, and then you email the board or the property manager and say, hey, do this. You're not doing anybody any favors, and you are not acting in a very organized way. I would say try and stop that. Try to make sure that all decisions are made at board meetings, and that the only ones that are taking place are because it is a true emergency, and then that's something that the manager can step in to do. But what ends up happening is a lot of times there are people who don't feel comfortable as a board member speaking up and talking about a concern. But what they do is they wait till after the board meeting and then they start emailing the property manager saying, hey, how about this? Hey, how about that? You need to do this. That's really not a fair way of being able to do things. I have someone who said, going back to the writing to the state representatives, the link in the letter that we sent on how you can connect with your state representative and state senator did not work for me. Can you send an update with a new link? I know you're an anonymous attendee, but I'll tell you what, again, if you will email me specifically that you did not have a link that opens up, contact me and I will work with you to make sure that you get one that works. I don't know what happened, but I'm sure we can make that work, because I know that there's well over 90 to 100 people who've already responded to their state legislators, and I appreciate that so much. Someone else said, I appreciate this overview of the legislation. What's the likelihood of it being enacted? What we're seeing is better than average likelihood that it's going to take place. what we want to do more than anything else is just what we would like to see is that I guess that we would be able to say, can we just put a hold on this legislation and not move forward with it? You know, legislators, in my radio show, I say that politician always wants to be able to say, I did something. I was able to, someone had a problem and I did something. Well, just because you do something doesn't mean that it's the right thing. And that it's good. There are unintended consequences. We would love to see that this would just be set aside. And I can tell you that if your state legislators are one of the 8 authors of this bill, I can tell you from a number of us that have gone to the state capitol, have tried to give testimony at Capitol hearings, we were dismissed out of hand. But one of the things that would make a difference is for all of you to contact all of your state representatives and all of your state senators. Because even if they aren't one of the authors of this bill, it'll make a difference. Because let me tell you how a bill progresses. A legislator hears from a constituent, we need a law about this. So the legislator is going to write a bill quickly, and he's going to try and get a couple of other colleagues. And if they're a Republican, they want to get a Democrat and so forth. And they want to get 3 or 4 people that are going to sign on and say, this is a bill that should be considered. Now this bill needs to go through different committees. It goes through a House committee because we deal with real estate, so everything's going to deal with the House. After the bill goes through the House committee, it goes through a judicial committee because now the judicial committee says, are there any other laws on the books that we already have that would be in contradiction to this new bill that we want to write? And so there's going to be discussion. But after all of that is done and things get ready, it gets moved forward for the entire body of the Minnesota Senate or the entire body of the Minnesota House of Representatives for that vote to be able to move forward. And that's where your vote, your communication is very key. Because even though you're dealing with a legislator who wasn't one of the main authors, a lot of these legislators know that for some of them, they only won from their constituent or from their person who was running against them in the last election. They may have won only by 200 votes. And when all of a sudden they get 5 letters from someone in their district that is taking notice, and they say, we live in a homeowner association, and that homeowner association represents 100 homes, maybe 200 homes, they know, oh man, this could mean a couple hundred votes. This could be the difference of whether I get reelected. And so your writing, your state representatives is crucial. And so if you have any questions on that, please contact me. I would be happy to help you because every letter is crucial. Every letter is going to make a difference. Another question that we have here is going back to the presentation. If you conduct your annual meetings with the ability for members to participate through Zoom, are those members joining remotely considered to be present for a quorum? Good question. The answer right now is no. The Minnesota legislature has not decided on that, and so electronic meetings have not been considered a way to vote. And the reason why is if the link to that meeting was given to someone who wasn't a homeowner and given to someone else could click on that link and pretend to be the someone who lives in the association when they don't. And so there's no real way of being able to verify that everybody that is linked in will into that meeting is a member and can vote. I think there's some things that can be done. I think there's some ways that Zoom and other people that provide this type of remote meetings can verify that. And I think that'll take place in the future. But right now, just know that people that when you have an annual meeting, but make sure you have the proxies and the people present. But go ahead and put it and have it available for people to join remotely, but those people joining remotely won't necessarily have the ability to vote. Another question that we have is, can you talk about the mandatory beneficial ownership information that must be provided? Oh, thank you for asking about that question. If there has been anything that has been more of a huge confusion, I don't know what it would be other than the CTA, the Corporate Transparency Act. This was something that Congress started enacted in 2019 and then kicked down the road a few years to put in place, saying that because they wanted to stop foreign terrorists from being able to receive money and to be able to do acts of terrorism in the United States. They wanted to have information, so they said any small corporation under $5 million would be we need to get information from. And it was ridiculous. They didn't vet it out at all. Homeowner associations are corporations, and most of them are under corporations under $5 million a year. You don't have a budget of $5 million. But guess what? You were incorporated, all of you were incorporated in the state where you started. And so for Congress to not think that a dispensation needed to be given to HOAs was ridiculous. So we were whitewashed with everybody else. But the current administration finally said, we are refusing to do anything. So even though it's still the law, the CTA is still the law, the Beneficial Ownership Act is still something that needs to be done. The current Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security and others, and for the IRS who were taking information said, we are refusing to require this information for anybody right now. So at this point, nothing needs to be done. You can, I think, forget about it. Next question we have comes from another individual who says, does the new proposed legislation apply to HOAs that have not yet adopted MKIWA? There are some aspects that, yes, are going to be universal. And there are some things that won't. So for example, I don't know what association you're with, the person who wrote that, but for example, if you're a single family homeowner association, you are not required to be under State Statute 515B. You're under State Statute 317A for nonprofit corporations. but some of the laws, the way it's written, are going to change state statute 317 on conflicts of interest, as I mentioned. So yes, it would apply to you. And it will also apply to it also could have ramifications. So I'm hoping that you would all write in a letter anyway, whether you are under MKIWA or not. I have one other homeowner who said our association didn't receive any communication on the legislation. Please email me tomorrow, and I will make sure that you get that information to pass on. And again, I will do that before I say goodbye here again. I'll put up my contact information so that you can connect with me personally. Another question that we have, and I think this is the last one for tonight. It says, for your information, not a question. Okay. The HOA Leadership Network has additional resources regarding the bill and the anticipated negative impacts. They have sample letters that members can use and adapt to send to their representatives. Yes, the HOA Leadership Network is an advertiser on the radio show that I do each and every week. They're great guys. And I can tell you that this entire industry, even a number of our competitors, we're all in this together. This is bigger than all of us. And there are a lot of great resources, sample letters that you could be sending over each and every point of why this bill, House File 1268, Senate File 1750 is not good. We have about, in what we send out are 9 different letters you could send out. The HOA Leadership Network has some. Thank you for that. And there are a lot of other places. The most important thing is we need to be active and we need to take part, because if we don't, we're going to have other people that are going to be making decisions for us, decisions that could have a great financial consequence. When you take a look at, for example, just another aspect is in the area of collection. If you can no longer charge someone more than $15 as a late fee for non-payment for their association fee, what kind of incentive is that for them to be current with the association? And if you're a single family homeowner association and your dues are $400 a year, you're $400 a year, and the person doesn't pay, and all they get is a $15 late fee. And then in year 2, they pay another $400 a year. Now they're up to $830. And this new law says that you can't foreclose on anybody until they get to $5,000. So you mean to tell me, how many years do you have to go through having someone not paying your association? And if you don't get other people to pay, a homeowner association is a nonprofit corporation, which means that you're not allowed by law to take in any more money than what's needed to pay the bills. But now you have a number of homeowners in your association who aren't paying, and they know darn well that there's nothing you can do to get them out of your association, because that amount hasn't gotten to $5,000 yet. How many months, how many years it's going to take before you're going to be able to get rid of them? Is that right? And when those people don't pay, are you going to have the water turned off for your irrigation for non-payment? Are you going to have no insurance provided to your association because you don't have enough money? No. what you're going to do is you're going to turn to all the good people who have been paying, saying, you need to ante up more because we have other people who are abusing the system. The law that's happening with state statute 1268 and 1750, to me, in my mind, is very much akin to an emotional support animal. How many people are using and abusing that today? And there's nothing you can do. Who are the real bullies? It's not the board of directors. It's people that are going to be able to use laws like this against the association from being able to run in a fair way to everybody. So let me take the moment once again here before I go, and I want to make sure that I give you my information and let's make sure that I do that here. I'm going to share once again, and that is I'm going to, here it is, folks. Here is my information. If you have a question that you want to talk to me about, there's my phone number. You haven't, you want to know my personal email, there's my email. So for those of you that need information for the link, for those of you that want to talk about this more, please contact me. This is such an important item that I think we need everybody's attention to this matter. So for tonight, let me just say, on behalf of everybody, New Concepts, I want to thank you so much for being our guest. Thank you so much for participating. And please take a look at future webinars that we're going to have coming up in the next upcoming months. Thank you and good night.